Welcome to Financial Freedom on Autopilot, where we help you draw out the map to unlock true freedom. Here's your host, real estate syndicator that's managed over 173 deals and doors over the past 18 years, Ivan Alfaro. Enjoy.
I'm going through something. Matter of fact, I'm going through a few things in my personal life in particular and in business. Some things in particular are taking longer than anticipated to get done. And for a guy like me that loves to close loops, it's pretty frustrating. It's pretty stressful. I don't like it one bit. You know, some of it is out of my control. So even if I wanted to elaborate on that, it's not really useful at this point. I'd rather share the entire story with you later. But I will talk about a few things in my past that were uncomfortable. Because this is the question, right? Can you sacrifice comfort for financial freedom? These uncomfortable things, these examples I'm going to cover in my history, it ultimately carved a path towards passive wealth using rental properties, and helped to leave me with income and capital that I didn't have before. And even if I didn't have it, I actually could have been in a much worse place. So it was a big risk offset. So let's jump in. First example, my first home that I bought back when I was 19. I was a web designer, and by age 21 I left that job, and I had to rent every single room out to buy myself time to find another job. It was uncomfortable, particularly because I essentially made a makeshift bedroom towards the back of the garage. And so that way I could rent every bedroom out I could, right, in the rest of the house. So it was uncomfortable, it was tight. My girlfriend at the time was not a big fan of it, but luckily she stuck through during that time. But ultimately, I was able to find a job within 30 days, luckily. I think it ended up being 2 to 3 months total. But at that last 30-day mark, it was really particularly useful because if I didn't, because I had also personal expenses, I could have faced foreclosure. So that buying of time was immensely useful by having that roommate rental income. Next example, 2015, purchased a property, spent about $120,000 on renovating it because I converted the basement to a studio, carriage house, to a barn that was used for woodworking, to a carriage house in the back. So I spent about $120,000 for that. The property itself was $150,000, and essentially it became a main house, studio, and carriage house, so a triplex. I pulled out a whole lot of debt from equity in another property and credit cards to make that happen. It was uncomfortable again, very stressful. Have a lot of debt just mounted up in one single point of time. Surprises in construction. I think that project ended up taking 6 months, and some corners were cut by a contractor, so I had to get some stuff redone. That was kind of my hit my head up against the wall type scenario, learning the business by force. But ultimately, that main house only made $1,000 a month during that back then. That's unheard of now for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So by converting the other spaces, it went from $1,000 a month over time to $4,000 a month over time. So that's when it's fully occupied, and also the property's value is over double what I purchased it for. It's close to $400,000. So essentially, again, income and capital that I didn't have before, but because of taking that step, it ultimately, that stress ended up having a return. That uncomfortability had a return. During the 2020 pandemic, I had to do a similar thing again because I was purchasing another property. In this case, it was a condo for my mom to be closer to supermarkets so she didn't have to walk too far. And I put myself in overly provocative position. Ultimately, I shouldn't have done it. It was very awkward and stressful. So ultimately, though, I also had a partnership that broke down. So that also added to the financial stress of it all. So I moved into the smallest room of my house so I could save every single dollar to buy another property and also not lose earnest money. Sometimes in situations like that, it's better to just lose earnest money than to try to force a deal from occurring, because that deal ended up being that condo, I should say. Half of it was rented so that my mom could stay in the other half. And so, but it ended up being a break-even scenario. So it was not really an investment. And I pushed hard to get that deal done to at least earn something. But it didn't. So I lived uncomfortably for probably 6 to 12 months to that end. I mean, ultimately got some happiness out of my mom, but I could have just as easily rented out a place for her at a much lower risk position, and that would have been essentially the same, right? A break-even scenario. So that's just something to keep in mind. This stuff is uncomfortable. It's stressful. It's not for everyone to do. Some people may just want to use their credit cards, their equity to go on vacations and stuff. And that's the alternative, right? But there's a risk too. That's what people don't think about sometimes, is spending money on things that don't bring you any return and keep you in comfort. And it's just, let's have a good time every year. Let's go on several vacations. Let's spend tens of thousands on vacations. Where is that going? Is that coming back to you? So essentially, you're not offsetting risk by that end either. The only thing you could mitigate is how much education you put into your system for financial freedom, and how much risk mitigation ground you could cover towards that end. The biggest lie you could tell yourself is that we control every single point of our comfort. That's just untrue. We're seeing a bunch of sectors just be diminished to a grain of sand right now. And so to think that your job is secure, your career is secure, everything about you is secure, and so keep living like it's all perfect and dandelions, it's just unwise. If you really want financial freedom, there's going to be some sacrifice. There's going to be some uncomfortable moments that you have to be real with yourself about so that you could make it past the valley. And hopefully you could experience many mountains like I have. If you have any questions, throw it in the comments. See you in the next episode.
Before you go, quick question for you. Do you prefer giving a hand up, not a handout, to people in need? Did you know that you can build serious wealth and cash flow while helping people out? Financial Freedom on Autopilot is brought to you by Common Walk, a hedge fund built on wealth through impact. We invest in and educate on niche real estate investments that build passive wealth and cash flow for investors like you, while providing opportunities to others that want a better life for themselves. While no investment is guaranteed, it's interesting to learn that billionaires like investor Warren Buffett have tripled down on the real estate niche we've mastered, which is affordable housing. As multifamily operators in this space, we've consistently generated double-digit returns for almost 20 years. To learn more about this niche investment class that literally no one is talking about, schedule a call with us at commonwalk.com/contact. This episode is for informational purposes only and does not constitute an offering to sell a security. Such an offering would solely be made through Commonwealth's confidential private placement memorandum, in strict accordance with all applicable securities laws and regulations of the United States. Prospective investors must rely on their own examination of the fund's prospects and the terms of the investment, including the merits and risks involved. All content shared in this recording does not speak to every individual or entity's financial position, goals, and risk tolerance. Therefore, consult a trusted financial advisor, certified public accountant, business coach, and attorney before making any financial decisions.